Missing Utah mom Susan Powell left behind a secret document with a chilling prediction. If I die, it may not be an accident, even if it looks like one.
Hope everything works out and we're all happy and live happily ever after, as much as that's possible.
A massive explosion at a Washington State home of Josh Powell. He's the husband under investigation in connection with his missing Utah wife. Then he blocked the social worker from entering. The social worker called her supervisor to report that she could smell gas, and then the home exploded.
After she recorded that video, she disappeared, and she has not been found to this day. But before her disappearance, Susan wrote a secret will and testament, implying she feared for her life. In her letter, Susan said, "I want it documented that there is extreme turmoil in our marriage." She also mentioned that Josh had threatened her if they got a divorce. And in the end, she reveals the shocking prediction: if I die, it may not be an accident, even if it looks like one. The Susan Cox Powell case is one of the most disturbing and unsolved in the United States. It's been more than 15 years, but still, no one has any clue what really happened or where Susan Cox Powell is. Is she alive or dead? It's a mystery. So, what happened before Susan went missing? Let's take a closer look. Susan was married to Joshua Powell in Puyallup, Washington. He had 2 sisters and 2 brothers. Joshua's family life was very troubled. Steven, Joshua's dad, was abusive and did not get along with the church. In 1992, Terica, Joshua's mom, filed for divorce and revealed that Steven shared pornographic pictures and videos with his sons and didn't set any rules for them. So in this kind of environment, Joshua had a tough time growing up. As a teenager, he killed his sister's pet gerbils and even threatened his mom with a knife. He also tried to end his life. Now, before he met Susan, Joshua also dated another woman. It was the late 1990s, and Joshua was living in Tacoma and studying at the University of Washington. He started dating Catherine Terry Everett, who he met at a church event. They moved in together, but Joshua was very controlling. Catherine said he wouldn't let her visit her family alone and set strict rules on what she could and couldn't do. She was so full of herself, but she couldn't get a chance to leave him. Then one day, Catherine got a chance to visit a friend in Utah without Joshua. Once she was out of his reach, she broke up with him over the phone and didn't come back to Washington. Then, in November 2000, Joshua met Susan Cox at a dinner party at his apartment. They both attended the same church. They started dating and got married in April 2001 at the Portland, Oregon Temple. Joshua had a business degree and worked for various companies, while Susan was a trained cosmetologist and later worked for Wells Fargo Investments. They had 2 sons, Charles in 2005 and Braden in 2007. Everything seems good, but beneath the surface, there is much going on in Susan's life. After their wedding, Joshua and Susan lived with Steven, Joshua's father, in South Hill, Washington for a short time. Steven, her father-in-law, became obsessed with Susan. He followed her around with a camcorder, spied on her with a mirror while she was in the bathroom, stole her underwear, read her journals, and even posted love songs online for her under a fake name.
I just had what is probably the most erotic experience I've had in my entire life. I hate to say it, I mean, of course, because I haven't had that many experiences, but Susan has been feeling ill. She got a cold, and I offered to rub her feet, to rub her toes, to give her some stimulation. That went on. I probably rubbed her feet, her toes, her beautiful feet. She has such pretty feet. Of course, everything about her is pretty, beautiful. And I know she felt it. I mean, I know she couldn't have missed it. She's not naive either, I know, from what I've read in her journals. That girl is not naive. When I started massaging her legs, I would have loved to go all the way up her legs, but I did do her calves because her feet were resting in my crotch, so I sort of rubbed her calves. She didn't seem to mind at all having me that close. I mean, I was close. I was touching her with my crotch. It's hard to remember everything I did. Man, I love that woman. She is so beautiful. Can't even get enough of her. Can't get enough of looking at her. She's so pretty.
Then, in 2003, Steven confessed his feelings to Susan, who was shocked and rejected him. This confession was accidentally recorded by Steven's camcorder.
I'm probably wrong, but I'm really falling in love with you. And, I don't know. I mean, for the last year and a half, you're about the only thing we can think about. And I don't know where it began. It probably began when you were living with me and you come into my office and, let me feel your legs with wax or whatever. And it was just one thing to another. That experience on the couch, your couch in Yakima 6 months ago was just, I know that, it was a massage, right? But just being with you for 2 hours and holding you, and maybe I'm getting the wrong signals from you. Maybe I'm interpreting something that I shouldn't be interpreting. It just, for example, when we were sitting on the couch, it just felt like you were very, I was extremely aroused, and I think you were somewhat aroused. At least I thought.
I don't know where you're going with this.
Susan, I'll tell you what I'm
married to your son, and I should just be the daughter-in-law.
I know.
Which puts me a step beneath your own children.
Soon after that, Susan and Joshua moved to Utah to get away from Steven. In Utah, things were not perfect either. Susan's journal entries and emails show that there were problems in her marriage with Joshua. Joshua wasn't going to church with the family, and he continued to be in contact with his father, despite Steven's creepy behavior towards his wife, Susan. Susan's friends noticed that Joshua was very controlling and spent money recklessly. In 2007, Joshua filed for bankruptcy with debts over $200,000. Then, in July 2008, Susan recorded a video showing property damage that she said Joshua had done. She also wrote a secret will saying, "I want it documented that there is extreme turmoil in our marriage, and if I die, it may not be an accident, even if it looks like one." So, after everything that has been happening in Susan's life, we get to December 6th, 2009. That morning, Susan, along with her sons Charles and Braden, went to church. A neighbor arrived at their house in the afternoon and left around 5 p.m. This was the last time anyone outside the family saw Susan. The next day, on December 7th, relatives reported that the Powell family was missing. Joshua's mom, Terica, and his sister Jennifer, who he wasn't close to, went to their house. They discovered that no one had dropped the boys off at daycare that morning. After failing to reach Joshua and Susan, they called the police. The police broke into the house, concerned that something bad had happened, like carbon monoxide poisoning. Inside, they found no one, but they did see 2 box fans blowing at a wet spot on the couch. Susan also didn't go to work on December 7th. Her purse, wallet, and ID were still at the house. Her cell phone was later found in the family's minivan, a Chrysler Town & Country, which Joshua had been using. Till then, no one has any idea where the whole family is. Then later that day, around 5 p.m., Joshua came back home with his 2 sons, Charles and Braden. The police immediately took him in for questioning.
I just spoke with some of our other detectives, and you're gonna have to wait here with us. You're not gonna go anywhere. One of our detectives just interviewed your children, and your children are telling our detectives that Mom went with you guys last night, and that she didn't come back.
She did not go with us.
Okay, well, with that, just getting that information, you're not going to go anywhere. I'm not going to let you leave. I'm going to detain you. You sit right here. If you want a lawyer and you want to talk, or you want to change your mind and talk, or take a CBSA test, then we can do those things. But
Now with that in mind,
They know that she didn't go with us.
well, here's the thing, kids are very honest. That's one thing I've learned in the years of doing this job. That when kids talk to us, we'll listen because they're honest. And they never lie, they don't make things up. So if they're saying they were with you, they were with you. Okay, I mean, she was with you. So I have to believe the kids. So now it's gonna be up to you if you wanna help us find her and help us get to the bottom of what really happened here. That's what we're here for, okay? We're gonna find out either way, with your help or without your help. I honestly don't need your help. I feel confident enough in my investigation and his investigation and everybody else involved. We have great detectives in this department that will find out what happened. We'll get to the bottom of this with your help or without your help. So I want to give you the opportunity to help us and tell us what really happened. Because you're the only one that knows.
Nothing that happened. She was not with us. And if my kids said that,
So your kids lie then? Do your kids lie?
sometimes they do. I mean, if they said that she was with us, they know that's not true.
So if they
And
say...
if they said that she was with us, then I
Then what?
guess that would put her out at Pony Express.
Okay, and that's my concern.
Joshua said he had left Susan sleeping at home just after midnight on December 7th. He said he took the boys camping on the Pony Express Trail in western Utah. The police didn't believe him, so they checked that area on December 10th, but found no sign of the campsite Joshua described. It was strange that Joshua would take his young boys camping after midnight in a snowstorm when they were supposed to go to daycare in the morning. Joshua also hadn't told his boss he wouldn't be at work that day. He told the police he thought it was Sunday, not Monday. So, we have this strange story from Joshua about a late-night camping trip in terrible weather, with no proof that they were ever at the campsite. The police were puzzled and suspicious. Susan's disappearance, Joshua's odd behavior, and the wet spot on the couch with fans blowing on it made everyone think something was very wrong. But no one has any idea till this point. So, after the investigation kept going, things took more turns between 2010 and 2012. When Susan disappeared in 2009, the Powells lived in West Valley City, Utah. But in 2012, Joshua had moved to Puyallup with his two boys. They lived with his dad Steven, his brothers Michael and Jonathan, and his sister Alina. Joshua had lost his job in West Valley City, so he decided to rent out their house in Utah and move back to Washington. Not long after moving, a website called susanpowell.org popped up. It claimed to be the official website of Susan Powell. The posts on the site defended Joshua, saying he was a victim of lies spread by Susan's family, his estranged sister Jennifer, and the LDS Church. Some posts even suggested a connection between Susan's disappearance and Steven Ketcher, a journalist who disappeared in Nevada the same week as Susan. They hinted that Susan and Steven Ketcher had run away to Brazil together. Now, there were no official site owners who came forward for these posts on the site, but it was believed that Joshua and his father Steven wrote them. Later, in 2010, Joshua and Steven claimed Susan left her family because of mental illness and ran away with another man. Susan's family strongly denied this, and furthermore, there was no evidence to support such claims. Police were also puzzled, and they started looking closely at Steven after learning from a family friend that he was obsessed with Susan. When they searched Steven's house in 2010, they found 4,500 pictures of Susan taken without her knowing. These pictures included close-ups of certain body parts, and some were taken while she was in the washroom. The investigation also turned towards Michael, Joshua's brother. He has also done something very unusual. After Susan disappeared, Michael sold his Ford Taurus to a wrecking yard in Pendleton, Oregon. He then ordered satellite images of the junkyard. When the police found the car, a cadaver dog signaled that human remains had been in the trunk, but it was so messed up that the DNA tests on the car did not provide clear answers. The investigation has now shifted its focus to Joshua's family. The website defending Joshua, the strange claims about Susan, and the discoveries in Steven's house all painted a disturbing picture. The police had more questions and more people to look into. Joshua's actions and his family's involvement only deepened the mystery surrounding Susan's disappearance. And then, Joshua's final, tragic act in 2012 brought more heartbreak to everyone involved. So, after the investigation kept digging into Susan's disappearance, on September 14, 2011, Utah authorities found what they thought might be a gravesite while searching Topaz Mountain. This desert area near Nephi, Utah, was a place Joshua often visited. They saw signs that someone had recently dug the soil with a shovel. But when they dug a few feet down and carefully sifted the soil, they didn't find any remains. Federal anthropologists said it wasn't an ancient burial site either. The police kept checking the site for a while, but couldn't find any remains. Their sniffer dogs had detected a scent, but strangely, nothing was there. Now at that time, the relationship between the Powell and Cox families had grown more hostile. In 2011, after police raided the Powell home, both Joshua and Steven spoke to major news outlets about journals Susan had supposedly written.
People who know me know that I'm a good dad. I work hard. I put my sons first.
Susan was very, very sexual with me. She was very flirtatious. I mean, I'm her father-in-law, and she would do a lot of things I mean, she was just, she did it. I did. I mean, we interacted in a lot of sexual ways because Susan enjoys doing that.
Do you think a part of you started falling in love with Susan?
That's pretty likely, yeah. I mean, yeah, I would say so. And there's no question in my mind that the feelings were mutual.
Steven claimed that he and Susan were falling in love before she disappeared. He used the journals, which Susan wrote when she was a teenager, to argue that she was mentally unstable and might have to run away with another man. A judge issued a permanent order to prevent Joshua and Steven from publishing anything from the journals, as there was no proof that Susan wrote them. The judge told them to return or destroy any journals they had already published. On September 22nd, Steven was arrested for voyeurism and child pornography. The police found out he had secretly videotaped young girls and many women, including Susan. John Long, the Assistant Attorney General for Washington State, said Joshua was also a subject in this investigation. Many people came forward to attest that Steven was obsessed with pornography and had a sexual fixation on Susan. And when Steven gets arrested, Susan's father files for custody of her children. A Washington court gave Chuck Cox temporary custody of the boys. The court said Joshua would have to move out of Steven's house if he wanted to get custody back. Joshua had no other option but to rent a house in South Hill. But authorities later claimed he never actually moved into that house. They believed he only made it look like he was following the court's orders while still living at Steven's home. At this point, the families were fighting, and the authorities kept uncovering more disturbing details. Joshua's actions and Steven's arrest made the situation even more tense. And after all these events unfolded, in late September 2011, Jennifer Graves, Joshua's sister, came forward and said she believed her brother Joshua was responsible for Susan's disappearance.
One of the officers said, "He's cleaned the carpets, that's why the fans are going." And it suddenly just hit me. He's done something to her. When he came home with the boys and without Susan, I was like, oh crap, this is not this is not good. This is just confirmation that he's done something to her.
Alina Powell, another sister, had been suspicious of him too. Strangely, she later changed her mind and said that Joshua was being unfairly targeted by the investigation. By this time, Joshua had to go through several court-ordered evaluations in Washington. James Manley, who conducted these evaluations, said Joshua had excellent parenting skills, a steady job history, and no criminal record or history of domestic violence. But there were concerns. Manley noted the ongoing criminal investigations, Joshua's refusal to admit personal flaws, his controlling behavior with his sons, and his constant defensiveness and paranoia. Manley thought this was partly due to the police and media attention, as well as Joshua's narcissistic traits. Manley recommended that Joshua have supervised visits with his sons several times a week. In the last week of January 2012, the police in West Valley City found about 400 images of simulated child pornography, bestiality, and incest on a computer taken from the Powell home. The previous owner of the computer, which Susan had purchased secondhand, had cached these images. Utah authorities accused Joshua of viewing these images. Even though the images were not illegal because they were hand-drawn or in a cartoonish 3D format, they worried the investigators. Joshua had earlier denied possessing any such material. Because of this, investigators recommended a more thorough psychosexual evaluation and a polygraph test for Joshua, but they didn't get any solid outcomes. So, as the investigation continued, more troubling details came to light. Jennifer's belief in her brother's guilt, the evaluations, and the discovery of disturbing images all painted a darker picture. The police and the courts kept working to find the truth, while Joshua's behavior and the findings made everyone more concerned. Next, things took another dark turn. Joshua's brother, Michael, created another website. He claimed Susan's parents were abusing and neglecting the children with the help of child welfare authorities. Michael also accused the West Valley City Police of mishandling Susan's disappearance and harassing Joshua. The Cox family's lawyers denied these accusations, and Google took down the site after a few days because it violated their terms of use. On February 5, 2012, social worker Elizabeth Griffin Hall took Charlie and Braden to a supervised visit at Joshua's house in South Hill. When Joshua grabbed his sons but wouldn't let her in, Hall called 911.
Something really weird has happened. The kids went into the house and the parent will not let me in the door. What should I do? But I think I need help right away. And this is the craziest thing. He looked right at me and closed the door. Are you there? I smell gasoline and he won't let me in. This could be life-threatening. I'm afraid for their lives. He blew up the house and the kids. He didn't ever leave the house. He just opened the door. The kids were one step ahead of me. They're 5 and 7. They were one step ahead of me, and he slammed the door in my face.
Soon after, the house exploded, killing Joshua and the two boys. It was a double murder-suicide, believing Joshua did it on purpose.
Josh Powell, who lost custody of his two boys after being suspected of killing his missing wife Susan back in 2009, killed himself and the children Sunday by setting the house on fire with a gas explosion.
The fire and apparent explosion was so powerful it shook neighbors' homes and sent bits of insulation from the house raining down on them.
When the police told Steven, who was in jail, he didn't seem very upset. Instead, it looks like he already knew that, and it was pre-planned. 2 weeks later, Steven used his Fifth Amendment right to avoid answering questions about Susan's disappearance. Investigators believed Steven knew what happened to Susan. In May 2012, Steven was convicted of voyeurism charges, but the trial didn't focus much on Susan's case. The investigation confirmed that Joshua had planned the explosion. The official cause of death for Joshua and the boys was carbon monoxide poisoning, but both boys had severe chopping injuries on their heads and necks. They found a hatchet near Joshua's body, and investigators believed he used it to attack his sons before the smoke and fumes overwhelmed them. Investigators investigating the fire also discovered 2 5-gallon cans of gasoline and evidence of their widespread use throughout the house. Friends and relatives told authorities that Joshua had emailed them goodbye messages a while ago, before the explosion. Some, including his local bishop, received instructions on where to find his money and how to shut off his utilities.
I am not able to live without my sons. I'm sorry to everyone I've hurt. Goodbye.
Joshua had also withdrawn $7,000 from his bank account and donated his children's toys and books to local charities the day before. He also named his brother Michael as the main beneficiary of his life insurance policy. The two unfortunate boys, Charles and Braden, were buried at Woodbine Cemetery, which also has a memorial for their mother. Joshua's remains were cremated. At this point, the loss of Joshua and the boys brought a devastating chapter to this ongoing mystery. The community and families involved kept seeking answers and justice for Susan, Charles, and Braden, hoping to find some resolution in this tragic tale. Now at this point, Joshua's father Steven and his brother Michael Powell supposedly have some knowledge about Susan's whereabouts and what happened to her. In 2012, the police questioned Michael several times. They had found his abandoned Ford at a wrecking yard in Oregon, and he acted evasive when they asked him why he left it there. However, on February 11th, 2013, about a year after Joshua and his sons died, Michael Powell also ended his own life in Minneapolis, Minnesota. He jumped from the roof of a parking garage. Utah authorities believe that Joshua and Michael worked together to murder Susan. On May 21, 2013, the West Valley City Police closed their active investigation into Susan's disappearance. Susan is still considered a missing person, but many believe Joshua killed her. In March 2018, there were calls to declare her legally dead, with homicide as the case. Next, in early 2022, Dave Sparks from Diesel Brothers led a cave exploration team that decided to search a mine shaft in the Utah desert for Susan's remains.
It feels different this time. Those were the words of Susan's father, Chuck Cox, early last year as he visited a search of an abandoned mine in Utah's West Desert, hoping to find his loving daughter.
In the mine shaft, they found several rib bones, what appeared to be a human vertebrae, scraps of clothing, and other things that might have been human remains. The team sent the remains to a lab for DNA testing. The tests showed that none of the bones belonged to Susan. The pants with the bones tested positive for male DNA, but there has been no cross-match to identify who that man was. To this day, Susan's fate remains a mystery. No one knows if she is still alive or where her body might be. The questions about her disappearance still haunt those who knew her, and the search for answers continues. Susan Powell's disappearance, the tragic death of her sons, and the mysterious actions of her husband and brother have left many questions unanswered. The investigations, searches, and discoveries only added to the confusion and heartbreak. Susan's family and friends still seek the truth, hoping for some closure and justice. We may never know exactly what happened to Susan or where she might be. Her case reminds us of the pain and uncertainty that families endure when a loved one goes missing. If you have any information that could assist the police in locating the remains of Susan Cox Powell, you are urged to get in touch with the authorities.